Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host. My name is not very sick Steve because I saw a doctor today and she confirmed I'm not very sick. But joining me as my co-host is delicious Waylon Davis.
Hey, everybody.
And you're not sick, are you?
No, no.
See, he's delicious and not sick. So that's a good combination. But on today's show, we're finally going to talk about a topic that we've actually been kicking around for about, 3-4 weeks now?
Yeah, about a month now. Yeah.
Yeah. I brought it up, and then, we had other things come up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we are going to try to do previews at least on pay-per-views, and then definitely a review. And then we had an interview with Noah Gabriel last week. That was a great time. Noah's always a good interview.
Oh, yeah. Always.
Yep. And we're helping to advertise the 27th anniversary show of the Northern Wrestling Federation. That's happening on the 26th of November at Hits in Covington. So if you are around Covington, go to Hits in Covington and go watch the show. If you're not going to be around Covington, get in your car, drive to Covington, go to Hits, and come to the show. It's going to be it's going to be an absolutely great show, I believe. And they're actually going to have,
I'm sure it will be.
Yeah. They're going to have 2 Hall of Fame inductions. I don't have the names in front of me, and I feel bad for that. I can look them up. But Noah, once again, man, you could tell when he got into wrestling, when he got into he just happened to go to Bone Crushers to start learning, that he really studied up.
Oh, yeah.
The company he was going to be a part of.
Yeah, he's extremely knowledgeable.
Yeah. And, and we've had other people actually say that about him as well, that, oh, yeah, Noah, I mean, because he's, 23 maybe?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So, Outlaw Matt Stevens and Brody Cormack, they're the ones going in. Noah actually talked quite a bit about him, and then he's also spoken about some of the other people who wrestled and were done wrestling before Noah ever started with the company.
Okay.
And, so that's why Noah's going to go far in the business, whether it's as a wrestler or whether it's as a promoter. I mean, I don't think he's going to stay just a wrestler. He's not going to stay in the ring because he already does so much stuff outside the ring anyway.
Right.
But he'll be part of the business for a very long time, I believe.
Yeah.
So, and just a great dude all around. I'll see him this coming Saturday in Mount Orb, 10 minutes away from my house. Yay.
There you go.
So, but the topic of the show was actually not Noah. That was last week. We're going to be doing a show talking about wrestling families, or actually, what I think I'll title it is Wrestling, a Family Affair.
There you go. That's a great title. I like it.
Yep. So, and what brought up, it hit me, what inspired me to actually bring it up was The Rock's daughter is now wrestling.
Yep.
I can't
think of her name.
I mean, we can't call her Pebble because I think that's already taken anyway. Yeah, wasn't there a singer named Pebbles?
Yes, there was.
Yeah,
R&B singer.
Yep. From like the late 80s, early 90s.
Yep. Her wrestling name, her real name is Simone Johnson, but her wrestling name is Ava Raine.
Okay. But
the WWE is the fourth generation wrestler in WWE.
Yep. And actually, when I was looking, apparently there's been a couple of the fourth generation wrestlers, just not in WWE.
Yeah.
And it's people that I'd never heard of. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, yeah, you count, but
they count, but yeah.
For our research, she's the first in WWE, which kind of makes sense because 25 years ago, her dad was the first third generation WWE wrestler.
Yep.
And, his dad wasn't a second generation. That was that weird.
Yeah.
It wasn't a straight line. It was like, because I don't think his mom ever wrestled. So
not that I've ever heard, no.
But the stories I heard, though, his grandmother scared people.
Yeah, I heard she was pretty tough. Yeah.
Yeah. They said you didn't,
you didn't mess with her.
Yeah. Because you didn't, you could actually mess with High Chief Peter Maivia before you mess with her. And he wasn't one that you'd want to mess with either. from what I've heard. So, but yeah, we'll talk about all about families and wrestling, and not only that, but yesterday was the unfortunate anniversary of the death of Eddie Guerrero.
Eddie Guerrero. Yep.
Yep.
17 years ago. Yeah.
God, which is, man, that's hard to believe.
I know.
Yeah, and and that's when you see Eddie Guerrero, and we'll talk about it more because I'm pretty sure if you had to list your wrestling families, the Guerrero family would be
Oh yeah,
on the list.
they're up there. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you watch Eddie. I mean, he was so innovative with a lot of the stuff that he did that I see
Hmm.
people now doing. I see people in the NWF doing it, like Sinclair Octavius
Hmm.
Bentley, and I saw him doing something it was on Eddie Guerrero's birthday. And he actually, when I talked to him afterwards, he had actually totally forgot it was Eddie's birthday. He just did it. But he's like, you know what, though? He said, it must have been on my mind,
You're right. Right.
So, but before we get started, I want to go ahead and give our contact and listing info. If you would like to email the show, it's at armchairbookingpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/armchairbookingpodcast. You can find us on Instagram, also at Armchair Booking Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Booking Armchair. You can find us on TikTok at Armchair Booking. You can find us on YouTube. It's the only video platform that I know of that we're on. And for as far as audio goes, if there's an audio platform, we are probably on it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I even when I go look at the stats, because I mean I
Mhm.
need to do that, and I could see the platforms that are being used, and there's some that I didn't upload us to.
Right. Right.
And I'm like, okay, I have not heard that one, but definitely not gonna be mad about it.
No. No.
No. And if you want to get some of our merch, like a t-shirt or a coffee mug, kind of like the one that I'm showing right here, you can go to tpublic.com/user/armchair-booking-podcast. And you can also find Dwaylen on Twitter at fat_daddy73, because he is the fat daddy, which is one half of Big and Fat, along with Big Mama, not the wrestler, but Dwaylen's wife. I do have to make sure I get the clarification.
Yeah, you got to make that distinction. Yeah.
Yep. And we have had Big Mama on, the wrestler Big Mama, we have had her on the show, and a couple times actually.
Yep.
But we're actually talking about Dwaylen's wife, Hope. She is the Big Mama to him being the fat daddy. Well, they also have their own social media channel, their TikTok and their YouTube. You go find them, find their videos. Which, were you able to put videos on there from SummerSlam? I should have thought about that.
No, I wasn't able. To.
Okay, because I remember you were saying there was some kind of connection issue there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that stinks. But either way, you had fun.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
And you can also find my other social media, or my other social media, my other podcast called the Cubicle Chat. They're just audio platforms only for right now. Maybe one day in the future we'll have video. Not sure, but it's been fun doing just audio for now. And before I go on, SummerSlam, you actually met some people and y'all exchanged information.
Yes.
And all of a sudden and that was back in July.
Yeah, it was it was very end of July is when they had SummerSlam.
Yeah, that's right, because I was down in Orlando and couldn't even watch it.
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden I got somebody sharing the last podcast. I was like, okay, that's cool. Don't know who the person is. And then I looked and I was like, okay, they have their own podcast, Wrestling Society.
Yes. Yes.
And I got chatting with him, and he said, by the way, I met a couple of your people at SummerSlam. Do what? And that's what I said, was it Dwaylen and Hope? And I tagged you, and they said, yes, it was. And they actually sent your picture. They had gotten y'all's picture, and I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
So I will tell you, everybody, that's why you talk to people, and that's why you network, because you never know. I mean, you may end up.
Yeah, you really don't.
Yep. So now I need to go. Their podcast is not on Apple, but it is on, I think, Spotify. And I have to remember during the day to actually switch platforms, to the ones
Oh,
that aren't on Apple, because a lot of times I'll get stuck on Apple Podcasts because I listen to way too many. I'm getting to the point now I'm going to have to um, like unsubscribe to some of them, because all they're just taking space on my phone. I have to go and delete them
right.
because I haven't been listening to them. And unfortunately, a lot of them are Conrad's podcasts.
Yeah, which
Um, the only
those
one of
three
his,
hour podcasts are little much.
yeah, the only one of his that I listen to every week is Arms.
Hmm.
Um, but some of the other ones, like you said, when like Bruce Pritchard, when a lot of the stuff was happening in WWE, of course, he has priorities. I mean, he has to focus on his work first. So
Yeah.
they were releasing these megasodes, and I'm like, did you seriously just drop a 7 hour episode? And I'm not joking; it was 7 hours.
I mean, who's going to listen to that?
Yeah,
Who's
I
going to
mean,
listen to that in one sitting? I mean, that's almost an entire workday
yeah,
to listen to one show on
one
a
show.
podcast.
And even if you put it on, because a lot of times I'm like, oh well, if I'm trying to listen to as many as I can, I'll put the speed on 1.25.
Hmm.
Sometimes 1.5, because it's not talking too fast where they just sound like the chipmunks.
Right,
And
right.
so,
But
but
it's
it's
kind of moving you along
moving
quicker.
along. Yep. And I'm like, that's still, I mean, and not only that, but I really hate to complain, because I mean, Conrad, he is the Podfather for a reason.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, like even the Orange Show, the first 5 minutes is ads,
Hmm.
and then it's almost like watching Raw. At least Raw, when Vince was really in charge of it, it was like,
Where they'd have the 20-minute promo at the beginning of the show.
yeah, he has a 5 minute ad, and then they come on speak, and then a few minutes later, well, there's another ad, and but they always advertise you can go set up your account on ad free shows. I'm like, mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, there
And
it is.
so it's turned into a money grab, and I think, unfortunately,
Yeah,
and it's nothing about the quality of the show, because I mean, if I've actually read up about Conrad Thompson. I mean, he's a successful businessman for a reason. I mean, he does believe in putting forth a quality product, but he also believes in putting forth advertising his stuff so you can,
right.
and he'll say his first thing is not podcast, it's his mortgage business,
Hmm.
which I'm like, okay, I mean, fair enough. But apparently he lives in a mansion that has an elevator. So
Oh, oh, okay.
yeah, so that's as anything. I mean, yeah, he has an elevator at his house. I mean, I could put an elevator in my house, but it would just go outside, and
Yeah.
yeah, and my neighbors would think I'm stupid. Which the one neighbor, good news. The one jerk-hole neighbor who threatened to shoot me and the other neighbor,
Yeah.
there is a for sale sign in front of his house.
Ah, good.
Yep. And my wife, she was leaving the driveway one day, and she called me and she said, "Hey, there's a photographer over there at their house, and it's one of those for taking pictures. Looks like a
Hmm.
realtor." And she said, "And I saw the for sale sign." So, so there you go. So, hopefully, the next person who lives there won't threaten to shoot me.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Hopefully not. I mean, you never know. I mean,
Yeah.
small town. I don't know. I mean, small town, plenty of meth labs around here. So, which is unfortunate, but we think the other house across the street, we think they may be, doing something, but we don't know
Oh,
for
wow.
sure.
Yeah.
Yep. But unfortunately, this area got hit hard by the opioid thing.
Gotcha.
Yep. So, but anyway, enough about that depressing crap. Let's talk about wrestling family. So, when I say like a wrestling family, what are the first ones that pop in your mind?
Von Erichs.
Yeah. For me, Von Erichs, obviously. The Crockett's,
Hmm.
even though they're not a wrestling family, but they're a family.
I mean, yeah. I mean, they were responsible for some of the, especially in the 80s, some of the, biggest matches that you could have seen back then.
The Harts,
Hmm.
huge family. What, it was 12 kids?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and who were some of the other ones? I mean, those are, of course, like I said, the
Uh,
Crockett's, they didn't wrestle, but
yeah.
the other ones, I mean, they were. the Von Erichs were also promoters. It was their territory. The
Mm-hmm.
Harts, Stampede Wrestling was their
Yeah.
territory.
Yep.
And one of the things that kind of hit me was like back in the territory days, it seems like almost every territory had a family that ran it.
Yeah. Running that territory. Yeah. Yeah.
And you could almost name the territory and you could say, oh, like Uno World Class out of Dallas,
Yep.
the Von Erichs,
Mm-hmm.
Amarillo, the Funks,
Yeah.
San Antonio, the Blanchards. Yeah, I mean, and that's really,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, now Houston was just ran by Paul Bosch. I mean, that wasn't really family,
Yeah.
but um, Mid Atlantic, the Crockett's,
Yeah.
Florida, the Grahams,
Yep.
um, the Southeast or Continental Championship Wrestling, the Armstrongs. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's just um, so to me, I mean, wrestling, like I said, I mean, really is a family affair. Even The Rock, his grandmother ran Hawaii.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
So if it wasn't for those families, I mean, I don't think we wouldn't have it the way we do now. Even though I do realize that professional wrestling has really evolved from the way it was with the territories. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say the McMahon family, because it was not the McMahon family; it was
It
Vince
was Vince.
McMahon.
Yeah.
Yeah, he decided he wanted to run everything, but it was to kind of stick it to his dad.
Yeah. Because his dad told him not to compete with the territories. And then as soon as his dad passed away and couldn't do anything about it, he took over every territory
Yeah,
that he could.
yeah. As soon as the dirt hit the coffin, he was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He was already pillaging.
Yep. And but some of the first families that I remember when I first started watching wrestling, watching Mid Atlantic, and these weren't necessarily families that were huge in wrestling, but to me they were good guys, and that was
Mm-hmm.
the Youngbloods. You
Yes.
remember them?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep, Mark and Jay Youngblood, um, and because they were actual brothers. And then when I'm talking about the families, I'm talking about real
Yeah.
blood relations,
Yeah. Not kayfabe
not kayfabe families.
families. Yeah.
I mean, I know there's like 18 Dudleys.
Yeah. But no.
So,
Well, the same with the Andersons. I mean,
yep,
great,
um,
great wrestling family, kayfabe wise, but
yep.
not a real life wrestling family.
And there's only one, well, I guess technically two, Gene Anderson and his
Mm-hmm.
son Brad Anderson.
Yes.
Those are the only two actual Andersons. Ole, his real name is Rogowski.
Yeah.
Um, Arn, I mean, he's Marty Lundy.
Yep.
And now, of course, his son Brock is,
Yep.
also wrestling, which they were up in Dayton just a couple of days ago, by the way.
Really.
Yeah. There was an event up there because the guys from the Dad World Order podcast, when I wanted to give them a shout out, they gave us a shout out. I got to give it back to them.
Yep.
They have another great show that just met them recently at an NWF show. They said they're planning on being at the anniversary show. They're not going to be able to make it to Mount Orb, unfortunately. But
Excuse me.
it'd be kind of cool if they did. But they're definitely going to be at the anniversary show, and they are going to be having an interview. I believe they said this coming Thursday. They're going to be interviewing our friend, one of our favorite interviews ever, Sinclair Octavius Bentley.
Yeah, they're going to have an absolute great time
Yep,
with that
because
interview.
my jaws always hurt
Oh yeah,
anytime we interview Sinclair because I'm
yeah.
laughing so hard.
He is hilarious. I mean, he is just such a good interview.
Yeah.
Y'all will definitely enjoy yourself.
Oh yeah, and he is such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the
Mm-hmm.
wrestling business,
Yep.
and we need to get him back on here too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's also a very busy man. I mean,
Yes, he
legitimately
is.
busy, and if you call him and say, "Hey, we need you to interview right now," and he has his daughter with him, he'll say,
Like,
"Oh
nope,
well, I got
made
my
it for
daughter."
you, and I respect that because
Yep, so do I.
I'm the same way. It's like your family comes first, so
Heck
it's
yeah.
like, nope, can't do it.
Yep. So, but
A
I feel
side note, we're talking about the Andersons. Do you know why Ole's name is Ole?
You told me once and I forgot.
It's actually it's oleander. It's like one of the most deadliest plants,
Yes,
one of
that's
the most
right.
deadliest flowers in the world. And Oli
Yes.
picked that and just instead of oleander, he just put Oli.
You know,
I mean, it fits.
yeah, it does. I mean, he Ole Anderson, I think, gets overlooked sometimes as far as having like such a great wrestling mind.
Yeah.
And I think he gets overlooked because Ole is also one of the grumpiest people apparently in the history of the sport.
Yeah, he's a bitter he's very bitter and it's like dude, you're gonna have to get over eventually. I mean, it's like I feel like from interviews that I've seen, I feel like he's bitter because when people think of the Horsemen, they automatically think Flair, Wyndham, Anderson, Blanchard, because that was the most successful version of the Horsemen. That's what people think of. Yes, Ole was a founding member. Yes, they were dominant with Ole, but Ole was getting older
Hmm.
and they needed somebody younger in that spot. Who better than Barry? I mean, Barry Windham
Yep.
was one of the most talented wrestlers to ever walk into the business.
And not only that, but I've seen the interviews where people talking about Ole. He did not think of the Horsemen as big. I mean, even though he still considers this a part of it, but he didn't think it to be as big as what everybody else considered it.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you've got to. I know we're getting a little off topic, but we'll
Hmm,
get back around.
we always do.
I saw a thing on Twitter, and they had a bunch of factions, and they said that you could only pick one, and all the other ones would disappear. And it was like NWO, DX, the Shield, the Wyatts, just different factions. But the Horsemen were the first one, and it's like you have to pick the Horsemen
You have to
because
pick the
without
Horsemen,
the Horsemen, there are no other factions because the
right?
concept started with the Horsemen. So
Exactly,
without them, you don't have a New World Order or D-Generation X or the Shield or anybody because that's the blueprint.
because they were the first.
They were the first. Yeah.
And sorry, I'm switching. I didn't realize that I was hogging up my own bandwidth over here.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, I'm going. Okay, I'm chopping up a little bit, and I know you're plugged directly in, so I was like,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
I know it's not Dwalen's Wi-Fi, so it's got to be on my end. And so I looked, and yeah, I'm a couple different devices on the same one.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I turned the Wi-Fi off of my phone.
yeah, I should have just did that, um, but and when it comes to the horsemen, yeah, before we get back onto the families, because we can actually include some of the families. The horsemen, they're all part. Yeah, see,
Yeah.
we'll make it fit. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, Ole was not the partier.
No, no.
He didn't even ride with them.
Yeah, because yeah, he didn't do the all night parties and the women and all that stuff. He just he wrestled and went home or went to back to his hotel room or whatever.
Yep. Which, in hindsight, kind of probably makes him the smarter of everybody, because
Yeah, yeah.
Ole's a millionaire with some business ventures outside of wrestling.
Oh yeah.
You
I
know,
mean, because he was smart with his money and he didn't blow it at the bar every night like some people we have heard about,
yeah, and we keep hearing about and hearing about and hearing about
even in their old age.
in their old age. Hey, how many times you filed for bankruptcy? Woo! It's like, uh huh.
Yeah,
I say, glad you had fun, dude. Seriously, give it up.
yeah, but was it worth it? I
Was it
mean,
worth it? If he says it's worth it, hey, okay. So don't want to go down that path, but that's also somebody else who has their own kids wrestling.
yep.
Barry Windham, he doesn't have
Hmm.
kids that I know of, but he has two nephews that,
Yep.
especially one of them is just burning it up right now. He's one of the hottest things in Sunburn,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and he's trying to bring the other one in.
He's
Do you
trying to
see
bring the
that?
other one in. His, Blackjack Mulligan was uh, their grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you've got that lineage, and Mike Rotunda is their dad.
Yep.
So it's like look at the talent in that, that lineage.
And don't forget Kendall Windham.
That's true. Yep.
Yep. I mean, Kendall Windham. He didn't blow it up the way everybody else did, but I mean, he was decent.
Yeah, he was what Jim Ross would call a good hand. I mean, you
Yeah,
knew you would always get a good performance from him. He just he was in Barry's shadow. He just
always.
wasn't. He was good, but Barry was great, and that was the difference.
The Barry Windham, who even Flair himself said that Barry Windham was like one of the most natural wrestlers
Yeah,
ever,
yeah,
and he just never worked out. He just went out and just
no,
did it and put on
he just did
five-star
it. Yeah,
performances every time.
yeah. I mean, he was doing 60-minute classics with Flair,
Yeah,
like,
they
and
even did
this
a
was
couple of
like,
90-minute ones.
yeah, and this was like his Barry Windham's early days in Jim Crockett Promotions. He hadn't been there long and shot up the card and was challenging Flair for the world title, like you said. And they were doing 60 and 90-minute matches, and he was keeping pace with Flair because Flair was a cardio beast back then,
Hmm.
and most people could not keep up with Flair. He just had an insane cardio.
Yeah, and I actually met Barry Windham at Chillicothe back
That's
back
right,
in
you did.
March.
Yeah.
Yep, I didn't get a picture taken with him, but he was sitting there. I just went up, shook his hand. He said, "Hey," and then he seemed like a pretty nice guy. He was actually sitting down because I'm pretty sure if he stood up, I'd be looking up, kind of like that.
Oh yeah, he's a good six. He was billed at 6'6", but I've heard he's actually taller than that.
Wouldn't doubt it. Actually, I think he's probably shrunk down to about 6'6" or 6'5" now,
Prob-
just because.
Probably,
But I
yeah,
mean,
just
but he
because
was
it
just.
happens.
I mean, you remember when he started? He was, like skinny, like
Hmm.
toothpick skinny,
Yeah,
and he was 6'6" doing drop kicks. Like,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's not something somebody that height. I just kind of took it for granted. Then you find out later on, no, somebody that height's not supposed to be able to do that.
yeah. I mean, he was doing drop kicks. He was doing he's the one that popularized the superplex that you see
Yes.
all the time in wrestling now. Barry Windham was the one that made that, like, as far as wrestling fans go, like a household thing.
Yeah.
Barry was 6'6", like 250 pounds, suplexing guys off the top rope.
Yep. And from that height doing it, which means
Yeah.
that his opponent has to be careful they're not going to hit the other corner.
Yeah.
Because there's one thing when Dynamite Kid would do it, because Dynamite Kid was what, 5'8",
On a good day. Yeah.
so he had to go to the top rope just to
Yeah.
get any height on it whatsoever.
Yep.
But
Speaking of Dynamite Kid, another family, because he was cousins. He
with
was he was British Bulldog's cousin.
here's the weird thing about that whole, okay, that you might as well suck him into the Hart family
Yeah, that's
because,
true. That's true.
yeah,
Yeah.
because he was cousins with Bulldog.
Hmm.
His wife was the sister of Bret Hart's first wife.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yep. And of course, he married Diana,
Yeah.
or I'm sorry, Bulldog, Davy
Yeah.
Boy. He
Married.
married Diana,
Yeah.
and and I mean they split up later on, but either
Yeah.
way, then they have their son Harry, and there's another one
Hmm.
in there.
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to try to name all the Hart boys.
And then you've
Uh,
got, I mean, you know, Jim Neidhart's daughter, Natalia.
yep.
She's currently wrestling. Well, she's out right now. She had to have a surgery. She had got her nose fractured.
Like for real fractured,
Yeah.
or I didn't know she was just actually having something
No, it's
done. And
from what she said on Twitter. It was she got it fractured. I think it was in the match she had with Shayna Baszler, and she took a knee to the face, and I think it was a little closer than they expected. But she's going to be out a couple months probably, letting that heal.
wow. Oh, that kind of stinks. I like Natalia. Um, but so yeah, the Hart. I mean, because we're talking about the families from Canada. And speaking of Canada, Wrestling with the Truth, another good podcast to go check out. They're out of Nova Scotia, Canada. We are scheduled to
Hmm.
be on their show at the end of this month. I'm looking forward to that.
Me too.
And if we're talking about famous Canadian families, of course you have the Harts. You also have the Rougeaus. On the other side of the
Hmm.
country, you have the Vachons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where are the Vachons out of?
Uh, crap. I'll have to look
You got to look it up.
because I can't remember.
Because I think that's another family that kind of gets overlooked, you know, and maybe because they weren't as successful as, of course, the Harts and the Rougeaus when they used to come to the their
Yeah,
entrance music was All American Boys. It was
yeah.
a good song. I'm sorry, it was actually a good song, and uh, I liked watching the Rougeaus just because of some of the moves they would do in the ring. Because I want to say it was one of the Rougeaus, the one who's always on the he does the French broadcast now whenever they have a pay per view, or at least they used to show them. They used to go around. Here's our French broadcasters. Here's our Chinese broadcasters. Here's our,
Hmm.
I think it was Raymond Rougeau that he's the
Yeah,
one doing
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I think he's also the same one that knocked out some of Dynamite Kid's teeth. But um,
Actually, yes, yes, he was.
yep.
Because they had the Bulldogs had pulled a prank on the Rougeaus, and so and they just thought it was hilarious. I can't remember exactly what the prank was, but it was like the next show or something. Um, Ray Rougeau walks in the locker room and just punches Dynamite in the mouth,
Well, he
and just
also he had a roll of quarters in
he
his
had a
hand when he did
roll of
it.
quarters, but yeah, but he popped him in the mouth and knocked. Yeah, I think they said knocked about three teeth out.
Yep.
But they said Dynamite left him alone after that.
Yeah.
I mean, you get your teeth knocked out, you tend to leave the person alone that knocked your teeth out. So
Usually,
if you're smart, anyway.
usually. But if you read,
Well,
I don't know,
because
did you ever read Dynamite's book?
I never did.
I will have to see if I can find it. I can send it to you because I have it, um, and he writes it in very British English,
Hmm.
which for those of you who've never don't know what I'm talking about, try to read the book. And first time I read it, it was before I lived in
You went
England,
to England, yeah.
and I was like, "This is English. I don't know what he's saying though." And then after I lived there, I was like, "Oh, I get it. Okay." And then
Yeah.
because
But
when he starts,
Dynamite was a bully though.
he was.
And if you didn't stand up to him, then he would never leave you alone. And that's why, Ray stood up to him and was that.
Um, yeah, he treated Dynamite treated everything like prison rules.
Yeah, he did.
So, um, actually, I'm having to jump on the other connection. I'm still kind of, so I just killed the Wi-Fi on my other two devices I have in front of me. I had to go and check to make sure my son turned off the um one of the video game systems because unfortunately he'll do that. He'll just leave it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll be in bed and the thing will be on. I'll come in there. I'm like, why'd you do that? you know.
Now Caden never does. Caden is very strict about that. If he's done with it, he shuts it off.
Okay. Leighton's getting a lot better about that, mainly because he's getting tired of it being taken away from him.
Yeah,
So
that'll
he'll
do it.
learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. But when we're talking about other wrestling families, and I think a family that has a lot of influence, even I don't think they've ever owned a promotion. I do know they've ran training camps though, and I'll say like a combination the Anawai Fatu families.
Yes, they are. That's a massive wrestling family. I
Yeah.
mean, you've got Rikishi, the Tonga Kid. You've got the High Chief, Peter Maivia, Rocky Johnson, The Rock. His daughter just started in NXT. Um, you've got the Usos. You've got Solo Sequoia. You've got Roman, of course.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Yokozuna, God rest his soul. Uh, uh, same
Umag
with same with
Umaga.
Umaga.
Yep.
Yep. Same with Rosie.
Rosie. Yep.
Yep.
And forgot Alpha and Sika, the
Yeah.
original.
Yeah. The originals. Yeah. The Wild Samoans are the ones who started it all.
And when you look at video footage of them from the 70s, you see them coming through the ring. I mean, they had their hair all,
Oh yeah, it was just all wild, and they just looked like they were about to just bust somebody up as soon as they got in the ring.
and They usually did.
Yeah,
And
I would have loved to have seen the Wild Samoans in their prime and the Road Warriors in their prime
ooh,
in a match because they both had
ooh.
that same mentality. We're rushing the ring and beating the crap out of our opponents as soon as we hit the ring.
Well, we kind of did have a version of that because when the Samoan SWAT team.
That's true. Yeah, I always liked the Samoan SWAT team.
Oh, I did too. They were one of the teams. I'm like, they're going to be hard to beat,
Uh huh.
very hard
Yeah.
to beat, and because I mean they just knew one speed, just
Hmm.
and they did not know stop. I mean it was just keep going, keep going, keep going,
Yeah.
and all the versions of the Samoan SWAT team, which I always thought that was such a strange name, and
Yeah. I.
you know,
Yeah.
um, kind of on a smaller other tangent. One of the things I've read about Roman is, and actually I think it was Yokozuna was the first one. They said about time they had a Samoan wrestler who wasn't being portrayed as a savage.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yep.
And but yeah, that was this one of the versions of the Samoan SWAT team was later on Rikishi and Tonga Kid, who I literally just found out 15 minutes before we started recording. They were twin brothers. I knew they were brothers. I didn't realize they were
Hmm.
twin brothers.
Yep.
I'm like, how did I not know that? Because I remember when the Tonga Kid first started wrestling, he was being portrayed kayfabe as Jimmy Snuka's cousin.
Yes. Yep.
And they just said, oh, he's Polynesian, make him a cousin, I guess.
Yeah.
That was,
Yeah. It's like,
and then later on, Siva Afi was also being portrayed as Jimmy Snuka's cousin.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because Snuka left the company and they brought Siva Afi in and he was okay.
Yeah.
Apparently he was also one of the most legitimately tough guys you'd ever want to,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, not somebody you'd want to tangle with, um, but yeah, so the Tonga Kid was there, and then of course Rikishi at the time, whatever name he was wrestling under, because he had a lot of names. I don't know if you ever looked at how many names he had, but
Yeah. When he was in Samoa some SWAT team, it was the version of that team I remember the most was Fatu and Samu,
yep.
and I can't remember who who Samu's uh, parents are,
Um, well, I
or
thought,
if they were part of the if he was part of
um,
that family.
well, I thought Samu was Tonga Kid.
It might have
Uh,
been. They might have been the name they gave him.
um, let me see.
Because I know in WWE he was
Yeah, there've
Tonga
been
Kid because it was him and Haku. They were the Islanders. They were feuding with the British Bulldogs.
yes, the Islanders. That was another thing. It was like which island?
Yeah, it's like which one?
Let's see. On SWAT team members. Fatu and Samu. The there's current members. Juicy, Fanal, Lance Anawahi, and Jacob Fatu. Jacob Fatu.
Jacob Fatu. Yes,
That's the other.
I've seen him wrestle, and he is fantastic. He is a super heavyweight and move. He reminds me a lot of Samoa Joe. He's a super heavyweight and
Okay.
moves like a cruiserweight.
Samoa Joe, the only Samoan wrestler I know of who's not part of the
Yes,
Anawahi
it's
Fatu.
not part of that family. Yep.
The Head Shrinkers, that was the other name they had.
Yes,
Which
that's
is
right.
not a good
Yeah, when
name.
they came to WWE, no, but they came to WWE, and it's like instead of just keeping the name that made them popular to begin with, it's like no, we're going to call them the Head Shrinkers because they were like, oh, they're Polynesian. We had the Wild Samoans, so now we'll just have the Head Shrinkers and keep that whole savage thing going. Like,
By
uh,
the way, I mean, and I will tell them first of all, it's not a good name to begin with.
no,
Second of all, I don't want to call it the small group of people who actually did shrink heads because there is
mhm.
a
Yeah,
group where they weren't Samoan. I don't remember where they're from, but they were
no,
not Samoan.
no, they were not.
Uh, but well, who was on it? And now I'm gonna have to look up this by two. Okay, Samu was some Samula Fred. I don't know why I just rolled my R on that. Fred on Hawaii. Um, Sammy Silk, Sam the Samoan, Samula. Okay, yeah, so that wasn't Tonga Kid. That was somebody else.
Okay.
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 There's so many of them. It's hard to keep track.
Yes.
Um, but either way,
Nia Jax. We forgot about
Nia
Nia Jax.
Jax, yeah,
She's in that family as well.
yep, distant cousin, and yeah, and if you notice that you don't hear about any of them like not knowing how to wrestle.
No, and people used to complain that Nia Jax was unsafe or didn't know how to wrestle. Nia Jax was a monster. She was the by far the strongest woman in the women's division. She
Hmm.
was supposed to beat up people. She was supposed to. She was the women's division's version of Vader.
Yeah,
She
you
just
know that's a good way to put it.
Vader's job was to maul people. That's what he did. That was Nia Jax's job, was to just overpower people. So to me, she did her job.
Well, to me, when she retweeted something I put on there once upon a time, so
Mhm.
I always remember that. Because I said something about Nia Jax being kind of like she really, and I really believed that at the time. That she was the future of women's wrestling.
Oh
And
yeah,
she gave it a like and she retweeted it, and
yeah,
then circumstances happen. Unfortunately, she's not in WWE now.
yeah.
I don't even think she's wrestling anymore, is she?
She's not. I follow her on Instagram, and she has her own farm, and I think she's gone back to doing modeling because she was doing that before she started wrestling, and she seems like she's just living
She's
her best life.
doing just fine.
Yeah,
Good for her.
yeah,
Um, yeah, she retweeted me. Chris Jericho just did a quote tweet for me the other day. I was like,
awesome.
yeah. Yeah, so that makes me happy. Um, yeah, he actually got him give. I'm just giving all sorts of shout outs today. I might have to tag all the podcasts I'm giving
Mhm.
shout outs.
Yep.
The guys from True Crime Cast were actually on Chris Jericho's podcast again the other day, and they were
Right.
talking about Jeffrey Dahmer. And I have not watched the Netflix thing yet.
I watched the first two episodes. It's good, and I mean, you really believe that guy is Jeffrey Dahmer. The guy that's playing him is like
That's
spot
what
on.
Jamie and John were saying.
Yeah, spot
And
on.
but they were talking about. I mean, I've read some stuff about Dahmer because I mean, I read about like true crime and serial killers and things like that.
Yeah,
I listen to some
same.
true crime podcasts, and
Yeah.
um, Jeffrey Dahmer was like a totally different level of depraved and sick,
Yes.
But they were talking about that with Chris Jericho, and then I said, yeah, two of my favorite podcasts, tagged them both. Where Chris Jericho gave it a quote tweet and like a fist bump. I was like, yeah. I'm like,
It's like
my weekend is complete now. I'm just
like
gonna,
yeah. It's like
yeah, I'm good, so make me happy. Um, and that was right about the time that the Western Brown High School lost their football game.
yeah.
So the whole town was like, what, we're proud of our guys. They did
I
great.
mean, they had a great run.
Yep, they ended up final record being 13-2, I think.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they lost one regular season game and then lost the playoff game. And one of their main
Mhm.
receivers was hurt. So
Hmm.
unfortunately, when one of your top guys is hurt, it's kind of hard, even if other people are trying to pick up the
Yeah.
slack. But I mean, if you have, so, um, by the way, you're frozen. I just want to let you know that. Yep, there you go.
Am I?
Now you're not. Okay, cool. All right. So anyway, back to the families. Um, but as I mentioned earlier, though, another family which I think has a lot of influence, and I think it's more in the Southwest and Mexico,
Hmm.
and just because of where they're located. But you still feel their influence in wrestling. Period. And that's the Guerreros.
Oh yes. Yeah. The gory special finisher. There is a wrestler in NXT, Alba Fire. She uses that. That's her finisher. She's used that like her entire career.
What
She's
is the
always
Rory
used that
special?
finisher. It's where they like you hook them from behind, where they're on your back and they're facing the opposite direction, and then you just plant them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh wow. Okay, I didn't realize
yeah,
that was called the Rory
yeah.
special.
Yep.
Uh, well, Roy Guerrero also invented a move that it surprised me because I always thought the Iron Sheik invented it, camel clutch.
Oh, okay. I always thought
Yeah,
it was the Iron Sheik too.
yeah. I mean, Roy Guerrero was the one who actually invented that move, and but Iron Sheik is the one who I think most people associate with it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it would you would almost think, oh, okay, it makes sense because Iron Sheik was from Iran,
Mm-hmm.
Middle East,
Yep.
where they have camels.
Yeah.
It's not something I'm making up. I mean, they have camels like out in the desert.
Yeah.
I've seen them, and so for him to call it the camel clutch, he's sitting. I mean, and that is a nasty move, by the way.
Yeah. The
Woo.
three people I think of when I think of the camel clutch is Iron Sheik is first. Sergeant Slaughter used it when he was heel, when he was WWE champion, when he was a heel, and then Rusev
Oh yeah,
called it the accolade, but it was the camel clutch.
just the camel clutch. And there was somebody, and I'd have to do some research to find out who it was. It was another wrestler who apparently had started using it. And somebody in the Guerrero family was there and said, "Hey, you need to give my dad credit, because so a lot of unwritten rules that everybody still talks about in wrestling is you don't just take somebody's finisher without actually."
Was it Muhammad Hassan?
Was he using the camel clutch?
Yes.
Maybe that's who it was. And they
Yeah.
said, you need to,
Yeah, he was using the camel clutch. Yeah, that was his finish. He was using that as a finisher during his like short run in WWE.
and apparently, he tried to say, well, Roy Guerrero's not who invented that. And they're like,
Yeah,
yeah, he
yeah,
was,
yeah, yeah, he is. Yeah.
so, but I mean, it really is like a move that I wish I could more people. Well, I guess, Rusev or
Miro.
Miro. Thank you.
Yeah.
Old. I'm telling you, old. um, Miro, for him using it, yes. If somebody is using it,
Hmm.
you know, um, but I don't. I mean, granted, I don't want it to become like the super kick or the DDT where
Yeah.
they used to be finishing moves and now they're
It's
like
just
opening
like
moves.
it's like an opening move or a trend. Yeah, they just use it as a transitional move, and it's like, no, that's supposed to be the end.
Gentleman, Chris Adams is going to
I
come
was
back to
just
you.
get yeah,
Yep.
I was just getting ready to say that gentleman Chris Adams would not be happy
No,
seeing
he would
how
not.
overused the super kick is.
Oh, actually, I wonder what Shawn Michaels thinks about it because I mean, it became his finisher.
I mean, he popularized that move. He made that move impressive just by the way that he did it though. It's like he could literally hit it on anybody from anywhere. You talk about like
Yeah.
the RKO being, you know, get RKO'd out of nowhere. You can get super kicked out of nowhere when it came to Shawn Michaels. He could hit anybody with it from
Oh,
any angle,
I think with this, Shawn Michaels about what, maybe 5'9", 5'10".
maybe.
He'd super kick Diesel, Kevin
Yeah,
Nash, who was 7 foot tall, legit.
yeah. He super kicked the Big Show.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
how do you?
The
I
Big
mean, how do you?
Show, Undertaker, Kane. I mean, he's super kicked guys that are like well above, his height. But
Well, the amazing thing is, you actually just mentioned another family, sort of the RKO,
yeah,
third
yeah,
generation,
yeah.
and that's a case of each generation was more successful than the
Then the
last.
next, yeah.
I mean, you don't always see that,
No.
um, because Bob Orton Sr. Was apparently pretty good in his day, and he
Hmm.
was he actually self-described himself as a hooker. Now, when we say he's a hooker, we don't mean like
Yeah,
somebody who's walking the streets of Nashville
yeah,
or Baltimore or city or even Mount Orb for that matter. You know, we don't mean somebody like that. We
yeah,
mean they would hook you like they were
yeah.
a shoots. They could.
They were a technician, and they would, you know, submission specialist. They would hook you, and like Arn Anderson has always said, you grab a body part and you render it useless because a three-legged table is no good to anybody.
Yep. And when wrestling was still considered, it was still part of the carny circuit.
Mm-hmm.
And well, you would always have, a guy in the audience who was legitimate, who actually could
Yeah.
probably take out, because they would all say, oh, and they would say, oh, that's fake. Let me come out there and try it. Well,
Mm-hmm.
all right. And they would bring in the hooker,
Yeah.
because you got somebody who's getting jazzy, and next thing you know,
Mm-hmm.
they're not playing jazz anymore.
Yeah.
and, and that was somebody like a Bob Orton Sr. And then, of course, Bob Orton Jr., he comes in and actually, you talk about the superplex. He was the first one I remember doing it. But he
Mm.
didn't, but for some reason, he didn't popularize it like Barry did.
No, yeah, I
Well,
remember
Barry,
seeing him
Barry
do
did it
it.
off the top rope. I think that
Yeah,
was the big
I
thing.
think that was the impressive part because you've got a guy that size, you know, suplexing somebody off the very top rope. Like, and
Yeah.
I think Bob always did it off the middle rope.
Yes.
He would suplex. It was still impressive. I mean,
Yeah.
but
I mean, he just had a hard problem, with that arm being broken
I
for like
mean,
6 years.
yeah, it just never healed.
Never
But I
healed.
mean, he
You
gets,
know,
but he's a legend, Hall of Famer. And then, of course, Randy, as
yeah.
soon as he retires, he's going in the Hall of Fame because look at the career he's had. And I mean, it speaks a lot to his maturity and just him working on himself because you look at how he started and how immature and how much trouble he got
Hmm.
into early in his career and where he's at now. Like
Yeah.
he is a well respected elder statesman at this point. I mean, he's been doing this for 20 years now.
My Lord. I guess he has, hasn't he?
Yeah, because he was in that 2002 class with Brock, Cena, and Batista.
4 Hall of Famers right there.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
and and think about this. Well, Randy Orton, I mean, his attitude, he was kicked out of the Marine Corps.
Yep.
And so and he knows, I mean, he did bad. That's why, when WWE, they were making that movie The Marine,
Mm-hmm.
they talked about having him, and the actual Marine Corps was like, oh,
Like,
absolutely
nope,
not.
nope, because he got a dishonorable discharge.
Yep.
Nope.
Yeah, he either got a dishonorable or a bad conduct, which ain't much better.
I
So,
think when I watched the Randy Orton like documentary that WWE did, it was called Evolution of a Predator. He talked about it and he said he was dishonorable
a
discharge.
dishonorable, okay,
Yeah.
because I know he got court-martialed. Like he got
Mm-hmm.
court-martialed
Yep.
twice.
Yeah, because he went originally he went AWOL and he just went home.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then he went back and then got in more trouble and then got court-martialed.
So just could not stay out of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And he can never call himself a Marine, because once a Marine,
No.
always a Marine. Believe me, my stepbrother, my nephew, some other friends of mine, they will tell you, once a Marine, always a Marine. Sure. Um, I did 20 years in the Air Force, but you don't hear us saying once an airman, always an airman, because some are like, you know what, at some point you got to kind of let it go. I'm very proud of
Yeah,
my
yeah,
proud of my 20 years I did,
right.
and I'll gladly talk about it because I have a lot of stories. Can't help it,
Yeah,
but but at some point you got to say, okay,
yeah,
okay. The Air Force never thought of, oh, once a Marine, always no, that's all right.
yeah.
But of course, when he started wrestling, yeah, he also had the same attitude issues. I mean, he was immature, and he was like
Yeah,
another level of
yeah,
immature.
yeah. I mean, he was what early, very early 20s
Yeah,
when he debuted in 2002, and I mean, he was just like you said, he was just immature and needed that time to learn, and he eventually got there. And especially as far as the maturity goes, and as far as his in ring work goes, it's like he is one of the smoothest wrestlers you'll ever see. Randy Orton has made a career out of making the least look like the most.
hmm.
Because Randy doesn't have to do a lot in the ring, but everything he does looks legit.
And one of the things I've you can find this if you want to call it an interview on YouTube where he confronts a reporter who apparently called him like soft or fragile or something like that, because he'd gotten injured.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, and he's threatening. I mean, he was being serious. He was going to beat the guy up, and it's like,
Hmm.
dude, you need to
It's
calm
like,
down.
calm down. Yeah, it's
You
like
know,
it'll
if
be
you can't,
okay.
I mean, if you cannot take, and I'll say this for any wrestler, anybody in any kind of entertainment position, anytime or anything where you are performing in front of people, if you can't take criticism, you
Yeah,
don't need to be doing it.
yeah. You need a thick skin,
Yes, you
and
do.
there are some wrestlers that just they don't have it. They don't have a thick skin.
Latest one apparently being Braun Strowman, but
Yes, Braun Strowman doesn't. Ronda Rousey doesn't.
nope.
I'm glad they've got her playing heel this time around because she's better at that than she is trying to be the grinning baby face. And but she didn't have thick skin and couldn't deal with the fans turning on her. And it's like how long did you think you could get pushed to the moon over all these other people that you know that came way before you,
Hmm.
before the fans saw through it and were like, nah, no, thank you.
Yeah, you overhyped rookie.
Exactly.
That's what Miss Bliss called her.
Yep.
Nope. But they don't have families in wrestling though, so
Yeah, that's true. So we'll
and
move back
yeah,
around.
so um, but Randy Orton was once part of the Wyatt family, but like we said, that's part of Bray Wyatt, who is part of the
Yeah.
Rotunda Wyndham.
Hmm.
But his name is Wyndham Rotunda.
Yeah.
Um, and his brother Bo Dallas is Taylor Rotunda.
Yeah.
But he's trying to bring his brother back in, along with Eric Rowan.
Hmm.
I really hope this time they acknowledge they are brothers.
Yeah. I mean, they had it. They had it right there
Mm-hmm.
when the B team was wrestling Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt for
Mm-hmm.
the tag titles. Bo tagged in and Bray tagged in. The crowd
Play,
erupted
oh,
because
they went
everybody
nuts.
knew, but they would not acknowledge it. The announcers just acted like this was the first time they had ever laid eyes on each other or anything. It's like just say they're brothers because everybody else
Yeah.
knows.
And do you remember the comparison I made back then?
Hmm.
A certain family named Poffo,
Yeah.
who one of the brothers wrestled under the name Randy Savage.
Yep.
Him and Lanny Poffo were in the company at the same time,
And they never acknowledged.
not once.
Nope. You had Lanny Poffo was the genius. He wrestled some. He managed Mr. Perfect for a while, and Savage was there at the exact same time, and they never acknowledged that they were brothers.
Lanny Poffo was the first wrestler I can remember that it was either a moonsault or it was um okay, your opponent's laying catty corner or perpendicular to the corner,
Hmm.
and you're on the middle rope, back facing your opponent, back facing to the ring,
Hmm.
and you jump and you have your leg, you kick your leg straight out, and then you
Hmm.
land on them. And I cannot, somebody in the WWE does that move now, and I cannot think of who it is. Um, but I think Land,
Um, I'm trying to think. I know Vader used to do that move. They called it the Vader
yes,
Bomb.
yes,
Uh, Jack Swagger, well, Jake Hager.
yeah,
He does it, and there's somebody else that does that. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
yeah. Lanny Poffo was the first one I remember seeing do that move, and I think he may have also did a moonsault.
probably. He was
Uh,
extremely athletic.
yeah, him and Randy Savage. I mean, his brother. They had two totally different styles.
Yeah, it's just Lanny's the gimmick overshadowed his in ring work because I mean he was good
Yeah,
in the ring,
yeah.
but the gimmick was especially during that time in the mid '80s the gimmick was more important than the in ring work, so that's what they pushed. So
And they didn't acknowledge they were brothers until Randy was being put in the Hall of Fame.
yeah.
And and then I was actually just seeing this as kind of a side note. I just saw this video yesterday. Hogan, they said I thought Landy inducted Savage in the Hall of Fame.
No, it
They
was
said
Hogan.
it was Hogan. And they're
Hmm.
like, Randy hated Hogan.
Yeah, and
You
Hogan
know,
tried to say that they had patched things up and you know made amends and all that, and it's like no, they didn't. No, they didn't.
Mm-mm.
Randy despised you. He took that to his grave.
Yep.
And why would you not have his brother induct him into the Hall of Fame instead of the glory hound Hulk Hogan over here?
Well, that doesn't work for me, brother. That's
Yeah.
why. That I mean, unfortunately, I'll say it. I mean, that's why.
Yeah.
And Hogan, he even has a nephew who wrestled. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not including them.
Horace. Yeah.
Of course, but we're not even going to include them because it was not a known wrestling family.
Right.
Um, but Randy and Lanny were, and
Yeah.
everywhere Randy went, Lanny went with
Yeah.
them because Randy always wanted to make sure his brother was taken care of.
Taken care of. Yeah. Yeah. Because when Randy went to WCW, Lanny had a role backstage. I think
Yeah,
he was an agent. He was
yep.
a road agent because Savage, Randy was going to make sure his brother was taken care of, like you said.
Because Randy took a pay cut in WCW. He
Hmm.
said, "Take whatever that difference is, give it to my brother. I'm already getting the money from Slim Jim."
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, and their dad was Angelo Poffo,
Yep.
a man who set the sit-up record, which I think it still stands, doesn't it?
As far as I know, I don't think anybody's broken it yet.
And I don't want to break it.
No.
When I was in the military, I hated sit-ups, hated them. I mean, and I think he did full-on sit-ups. He wasn't doing crunches.
Hmm.
Let me see, Lanny Poffo sit-ups. I bet Kyle would know.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure he
Yeah,
would.
because our friend Kyle, former co-host, people don't know Kyle is um, he holds some records in the state of West Virginia
Hmm.
for his lifting. Dude's a beast. I mean, I'll just say it flat out. And if you ever
Oh,
see,
yeah.
yeah, but as I'm Googling, instead of putting Angelo Poffo, I typed in Kyle Poffo. Let's see, sit-ups. Because Kyle has told me his records, and I'm like, dude, you're not human. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
let's see, Angelo Poffo, um, sit-ups. Let's see, how many sit-ups did he do? This is crazy. He completed 6,033 sit-ups in 4 hours and 10 minutes.
Oh, my stomach hurts just thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, now don't get me wrong, I could do that many, not in 4 hours or 10 minutes.
Not
We're
in 4
talking
hours. No.
no, I mean we're talking like maybe 4 years.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Give me a little time. I can get it
yeah,
done. But
I mean, have patience.
yeah, why?
But
It's like, don't be in a hurry.
I yeah, it didn't say if he still holds the record, but either way, I mean, he held the record for
Yeah.
push-ups or sit-ups. I hate sit-ups. Wasn't that much of a fan of push-ups either, but that's because apparently my form was not the greatest.
Mhm.
If you have long arms, it's hard to get
It
good.
is. Yeah.
I mean, um, now I will say this, when I was still in the Air Force, when they went back to doing PT tests, and because there for a while they were doing a
Hmm.
bicycle ergonomic test. To max out my push-ups for my age, I had to do, I think it was 54 in a minute,
Hmm.
and I could do it. I could actually max up my crunches too, but to do push up about 210, 220 pounds, 54
Hmm.
times in less than a minute, pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. But anyway, so um, another pair of brothers, and actually they had their sister there as well at the same time. One of the brothers was like way up here, and a lot of people say arguably one of the greatest ever, especially who to never hold a world title.
Mm.
He let his
Yeah.
own demons get in the way.
Yeah.
His younger brother was middle mid card at best,
Hmm.
and their younger sister, she was top of the women's game for a bit.
Yeah.
You have a
Hold on.
visitor.
Yeah. Let me shut that door. She realized I was on the podcast. Okay. Yeah. I saw
And
the look on her face.
yeah,
For people that don't know, that was my youngest daughter, Abby, that popped her head in the room, and as soon as she saw my headset on, she was like, "Oh," and then she
oh,
just left.
eek. Him's recording a podcast. um, but yeah, their younger sister she was the women's champion for a little bit, wasn't she?
Yep. Yep.
But not a real long time. But and they're also and of course, if people haven't realized what I'm talking about Jake the Snake Roberts, Sam Houston, and Rockin' Robin, and their dad was one of the most disgusting human beings ever.
Yeah. Just
Yeah, Grizzly Smith. You watch the Dark Side of the Ring episode about that, and just forewarning, it is pretty disturbing.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
not
is.
the Dark
Please do
Side.
not watch that with your children in the room.
No,
because it's rough.
Yeah, don't watch it before you go to bed either. Like not right before
No.
because
not if you want to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, and I will say this about the Dark Side of the Ring: they're all good. I mean, and they go into dark stories because I mean that's they talk about some behind the scenes stuff that's not necessarily the best. Not all of them are disturbing though.
No.
This one was very, because Grizzly Smith, he was a predator, he was a pedophile, he was, some of the other things that he put his kids through, making them believe that he was actually injured when he wasn't.
Yeah.
And that's like pretty light on the things that he did.
Yeah.
But you could tell the toll it had, especially
Jake. Yeah.
And now, and I've actually met Jake, and I've actually met Sam Houston. I have not met Rockin' Robin, and I've met Sam Houston's ex-wife, Nicole Roberts, baby doll.
Baby doll.
So we're still trying to get her on the show, and send her message. But her schedule is really, really tight, so it is kind of hard to get her on the show.
Right.
Just because of her availability. But I mean, you know what? I mean, she's also married and she has a family, so and obviously we respect that. But her dad was also a promoter, so she's another one. She was part of a wrestling family, and then she married into a wrestling family.
Yep.
And she's not. I mean, now she does appearances, obviously, but yeah, because her dad, he promoted somewhere in Texas. Was it that one out of Houston, maybe?
I think that sounds right.
Or Lubbock, or but yeah, so she was kind of involved with wrestling from a little kid, and she actually did wrestle some, but she was more known for being, a valet manager, the Perfect 10. And she in high school, she was also she was on the track and field team. She threw the shot put.
Oh, okay.
So that meant that punch that she would throw, like when she knocked Jim Cornette out.
Yeah,
that was she threw legitimate punches. I mean, because if you can throw a shot put, that lead ball, I'm like, and that breaks my hand picking it up, and she's just heaving it. So, but
let's see, we've also got the Rhodes family.
Got the Rhodes, of course, Dustin, Cody. I know we're missing some. I mean, there's also some families in Japan. There's that, like Tatsumi Fujinami, I believe his son wrestled.
Yes.
Let's see, and I had it pulled up on Wikipedia. I had all these wrestling families pulled up, and then there we go. Let's see, the DiBiase's.
Yep.
Of course, $1 Million Man. I mean,
in New Japan, you've got Haku, his son, Tongaloa, and crap. Why am I going blank? He adopted. Hold on. I don't know why I'm drawing the blank.
I'm looking up
Gorillas of Destiny. Tama Tonga. That's it.
Okay.
And so you've got that. So you've got Haku and his two sons, and it's just which some of the toughest people you'll ever meet. So,
Yeah, we've heard the stories, and
hmm
I'm like, I don't want to go try to verify them because I don't want to get
no,
punched.
no, I
So,
I want to go
um,
to sleep on my own terms, not Haku
yeah,
knocking me out.
exactly. But we're talking about families who ran the promotions,
hmm
like the Armstrongs down in Pensacola,
Yeah.
and in the Northwest, you had like the Owens families and the Bars apparently ran those. Um, but in Puerto Rico,
Yep.
the Colognes,
Yeah.
and then along with the Colognes, you also have Jose Gonzalez, the man who murdered Bruiser Brody. I said
hmm
what I said.
Yeah. He did it.
He did it, and I want to say like the Invaders, weren't they all brothers anyway?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so, um, but the Colognes, I mean, Carlos Colon, I mean, he is the one. The man has been running Puerto Rico for what,
Oh
50
yeah.
years, almost 50
Yeah.
years.
You think of Puerto Rico as far as wrestling goes, that's who you think of
Yeah,
because that's who ran Puerto Rico.
that is who ran Puerto Rico,
hmm
and did it in Puerto Rico. I mean, because I love seeing the footage. Every once in a while, I was able to catch on some channels. They would actually show the stuff coming out of WWC,
hmm
World Wrestling Council, and I loved watching their matches because they were a lot more brutal
Yeah.
and they weren't the clown stuff coming out of WWF.
hmm
Um, and I love the technical stuff coming out of Mid Atlantic, but there was something about that brutality
Yeah.
that I was like, yeah. There was also right at the same time I started listening to metal. So I
So
don't
it kind of yeah,
they kind of
you kind of
fit.
had that merge. You like yeah.
So, uh, but then you also have, down in Mexico, you have like, well, I don't know their last name, but Mil Mascaris and his brother Dos
hmm
Carlos. I mean, their
Yep.
family was running a lot of stuff.
Yep.
They're also related to Alberto Del Rio.
Yep. That's right.
I mean, just so many families that the Briscoes.
Yeah. Yep.
Jack and Jerry Briscoe, because they were part of the first Starcade. They were going against Ricky Steamboat and Mark Youngblood, I think, for the NWA World. It was either Mark or Jay. I don't remember which
I
one.
think it was Jay.
Was it Jay?
I
Okay,
think it was Steamboat and Jay Youngblood.
because
I,
those were both really good matches, or both teams were really good. The Briscoes were bad guys,
yeah.
or Ric Flair doesn't like it when we call them heels. Um,
Oh my God.
yeah. Oh, and another family. I don't know how we're missing out on them. The Mysterios.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the Rey Mysterio that we know now, they no longer put the Junior in front of his name or
hmm
behind his name. Yeah, but the original Rey Mysterio apparently was actually his uncle.
Yes, it was his uncle, and then he passed that on to the Rey Mysterio that we know, and
Yep.
everywhere else he was Rey Mysterio Jr. Once he got to WWE, he's just Rey Mysterio.
And now we have Dominic,
hmm
who, uh, poor Dominic. He's. I
Yeah,
think.
I
I think
mean
they're pushing too much on him right now. I think.
that's what I think. I think they skill wise he's coming along good, but
Yeah.
like I think it's good that they turned him heel. Kind of differentiate him from Ray because Ray is so over as a babyface,
Hmm.
and but he doesn't have that charisma
Right.
that you know that helps a heel character get over.
And Rey Mysterio, they couldn't turn him heel.
No,
He could try to turn heel. The fans won't allow it to happen.
the
You
only time I
know.
think he ever worked heel was when he was in WCW when they had the Filthy Animals faction. It was him, Conan, Eddie Guerrero, and Billy Kidman. I think they started out as heels, but then they got over with the fans and ended up turning face.
Uh,
So that's the only time I can think of that Ray's worked heel.
I mean, I like Billy Kidman, but when you mention all the names in the faction, I'm like, one of these things is not like
Not
the
like the
other.
other. Yeah, yeah.
And he's like, well, there you go. But we also have uh, Braun Breaker,
hmm
who is Rick Steiner's son.
Yeah, Scott Steiner's uncle. I'm telling you, if you Braun Breaker is a perfect blend of the Steiner brothers.
Yes.
If you combine the Steiner brothers together, it's Braun Breaker.
And I'm seeing that. Apparently, if you're talking about, because we have like siblings,
hmm
it could be a brother or a sister. Apparently, nibblings is either it could be a nephew or a niece.
Oh, okay.
I'm just
I
not
didn't
seeing that
know.
word, and I'm just guessing. It's on Wikipedia, and like, okay, it sounds kind of gross, but
I
like,
just think of when I think of the niblets, the little cans of corn. When I heard that, that's what I thought of.
um, but the one family they're not listing on here, they're not listing Terrence Davis, and I think they need to put him on here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and if anybody has never seen Terrence, we need to get him on the show so people can actually see
Yeah.
Terrence. Why didn't Terrence ever try to go into wrestling? Because I think actually I think he would have done well.
I don't know.
Well, Terrence, I mean, he probably was like, you know what, I'm just going to put my brain to use because
Yeah. Yeah.
Terrence is more of the nerdy side,
hmm
a big nerd,
Yeah.
but so he's like, yeah, I'd just rather do this.
Yeah.
Um, and he met Flair.
Yeah,
He
he
said it
did.
that it was like a business transaction, but he met Flair.
Yeah.
Um, here's a couple that people don't realize, or maybe they forgot they were actually related. Gorilla Monsoon and his son Joey Morella.
That's right. That's right. Yep.
Um, Ronnie Garvin and Jimmy Garvin.
hmm
Now they
Yep.
are related, but not how they were billed as being
Yeah,
related.
they were billed as brothers,
Right.
but they actually aren't they uncle and nephew?
No, Ronnie Garvin is Jimmy Garvin's stepdad.
Stepdad. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Um, but there's only like maybe a 15-year age difference between the two.
hmm Okay.
So but they were billed as brothers back in the 70s,
Yeah.
along with Terry Garvin.
hmm
Um, who unfortunately Terry Garvin was known for other things. He was caught up in a scandal. Uh,
Yeah.
and if y'all want to know about that, just go read it. I'm
Yeah.
not. This is a family friendly show. I'll just leave it
Yeah.
at that. Um,
Yeah.
let's see who are some of the other ones that are being listed here. Luna Vachon. Totally forgot about Luna when I mentioned Paul and
hmm
Butcher. Or Mad Dog and Butcher
And
Vachon.
Yeah, Mad Dog.
Uh, from around this area, Brian Pillman and apparently Lexi Pillman.
hmm
So
And
Brian. Well,
then you got Brian Pillman Jr. wrestling in
mhm.
AEW.
Yep. Um, I'll say the McMahon family because you can't not
Can't
do
talk
it.
about wrestling families and not talk about the McMahons because I mean, for better or for worse, they have shaped pro wrestling, you know, for decades. So
And they'll actually say that Shane and Stephanie were fourth generation because you had Jess McMahon, Vince
hmm
Senior, Vince
yeah,
Junior, Shane and Stephanie,
yeah.
along with now Triple H is part of the family. And
hmm
yes, he may have married the billionaire owner's daughter. However, Triple H, I mean, he's doing right by the business. I mean, I'll say it
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
definitely. Yeah.
Um, and this is right after his father-in-law fired his brother-in-law. They're not
Yeah.
that close of a family if you think about it.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you got to go.
Yeah, I mean, he legitimately fired his own son
hmm
because he showed his rear end at the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
Um, and for those who don't know what I'm saying, he did not literally pull his pants down to show his butt. There is a saying you hear it in the South.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
showed the butt, they showed the rear end. You know, means he made a spectacle of himself.
Hmm.
So, man, there were so many of them, and some you kind of forget about, like Mark Canterbury, also known
Oh
as
yeah.
Henry O. Godwin.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, his dad was a wrestler. And I think he also has a son. Yeah, so you're talking a few generations. Um,
You've got Jerry and Jeff Jarrett. You've got
yep, no more promoters. Think about it,
yep,
more promoters.
yep, Karen Jarrett because she was Kurt Angle's ex-wife. She married
Hmm.
Jeff Jarrett, so she married into that family.
Man, so many of these that I didn't even know they had kids who were wrestling. Apparently, Barry Darso has a son named Dakota who is starting to wrestle.
Oh wow.
Yep. And another. Well, I don't think the whole family promotes, but I know at least one of the brothers does. The Fultons.
Yes.
Bobby
Yes.
Fulton is promoter in Chillicothe because that's where he's
Mm-hmm.
from.
Yep.
And this is actually some news. It's not really breaking anymore because it just happened like yesterday, the day before.
Mm-hmm.
He was part of the NWA show.
Was he?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All
They
right.
actually recognized him, and because if you follow him on social media, he's a very positive person. The way he's always like
Mm-hmm.
he's very gracious. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's nice to be remembered.
Right.
And it was when somebody won the NWA World Title. The Funkadactyl, not the Funkadactyls. Um,
Funkasaurus,
Funkasaurus.
Tyrus,
Thank you. Yes,
Tyrus. Yeah.
yes, he won that belt.
Yeah.
Well, at least he won the replica. I got the belt right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw that and it's like, why would you put
There,
that belt on that guy?
there's been a lot of mixed reactions that I've noticed. I don't know a lot about him as far as wrestling, but
I did.
I'm not seeing anything positive. Actually, I say mixed reactions. I'm not really seeing anything positive about it.
Part of it is he's not a good person. Like he's a gross human being. And then he's not good in the ring. I mean, I know he's a big dude and he's supposed to be a monster, but he's just not a good worker at
And
all.
I think that's what the guys on the Dad World Order podcast were saying.
Yeah.
Um, but you know who we really need to ask about it?
Ted.
Ted. We need to ask Ted.
And Tyrus is a heel, so it worked perfect because that's what Ted discusses is the art of being a heel.
Ted's latest podcast, he was talking about the heels who portray themselves as being rich,
Mm-hmm.
and he plays uh two famous, well, one extremely famous promo. He plays down at the end. That's Dusty Rhodes, Hard Times,
Yes.
and the other one is one of Ric Flair's many promos. But this one I remember stands out because he's talking about um, is that the one? I think it was one of the first times he said limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, son of a
Is it
gun.
the one where he said he spent more money on spilt liquor
Yes, that one.
and
It was a spilled
and
liquor.
bars from here, across the world
Yes, it
than
was a
whoever
spilled
he
liquor
was talking
promo.
about? And he's like, I spent more money, than you made.
Yeah, and because Ted, the title of it is, I think, spilt liquor. Let me find it amongst the way too many podcasts I listen to, but his is one I always listen to no matter what. Spilt liquor and hard times. That's the name of it.
There you go. Because that's one of
Uh,
my favorite Flair promos.
yes, and he goes all about that, because Ted can really break it down and explain why the heels, why they work so good, and it's because they're bad guys because they would be bad guys if you knew them outside the ring,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
you know. Um, and so because Stone Cold Steve Austin, he was the blue collar everyman going against Vince McMahon, the evil, at the time
Yeah, billionaire.
multi-billionaire. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so that kind of appeal. Well, everybody's against him because he's an evil person because of what he's
Yeah.
doing,
Yeah.
and and of course, he talks about the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase,
Mm-hmm.
part of another great wrestling family. He's the one though that made it bigger than any of them.
Oh yeah.
And he's not like one of his sons who went who got in a little bit of trouble for like stealing from a charity or something. I don't remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and yeah, just go check out Ted, The Hill Truth. He's planning a meet and greet down in Antarctica. Sometime middle of December is the last we heard.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you can make it to Antarctica, go down. Ted is meet and
Check it
greet.
out.
Go check it out. And so it makes me wonder about it because he hasn't mentioned MySpace in a while. So but I bet he's still trending #1 on
Oh, I'm
MySpace.
sure. Yeah.
But Ted really is the focal point. He is the one bringing the wrestling podcast community together.
Yes. And
And
we are very thankful.
yes, because he's mentioned our name quite a few times. He's been on our show, been on
Mhm.
his show. He's part of the Smack Raw podcast network now. Which
Yep.
with botch spots and chair shots and some other ones, and there some other great shows. Like I said, Wrestling with the Truth is another great show.
Mhm.
I will mention True Crime Cast and Bless Their Hearts just because they're associated with Chris Jericho, and Chris Jericho quote tweeted me when I tagged them. So there you
Exactly.
go.
Yep.
And I believe there's also Wrestling World, Austin Boyer. Just look up Wrestling World. That's another
Okay.
podcast. It's just him. His episodes are normally like 20, 25 minutes long.
Mhm.
Um, and you got to think, with us, we can just bounce off each other.
Yeah.
With him, it's just him. So
Just him. Yeah.
yeah, just him. So I imagine, yeah, it could take a little bit. The only person I know who can go consistently for 2 or more hours is Justin
Mhm.
from TNC Sports Talk.
You're right. Right.
So, but he has to really get everything.
Mhm.
He spends a lot of time preparing because
Yeah.
it's just him for
Right.
2 hours. So I cannot think of anything else. Because we know, yes, anybody listening, we realize or watching. We realize there are so many other families that we haven't mentioned because just looking through this list, there is a ton.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Wrestling is a family
Yeah.
affair because the
Yep.
Ganyas ran the AWA. That's another family.
Yep.
With them, you also had Larry Zabesco. He married into the family.
That's right.
And, but without those families, because they said, okay, I'm going to, we are going to come together as a family to run this, but we're going to try to help everybody else out. Occasionally,
Yeah.
you would have somebody honk it up like Bill Watts letting Erich Watts getting a big push.
Yeah.
That was dumb.
That was a disaster.
Yeah. And granted, it was the first time I ever saw the step over toe hold, the STF.
Oh,
First time I
okay.
ever saw that. So I was like, okay, it's a cool move, but the rest of it is just kind of hot garbage.
Yeah.
And he just pushed his kid and
Mhm.
shouldn't have done it. But here in the next couple of weeks, they're prepping up for Survivor Series, War Games.
Mhm.
We're also prepping up locally for a couple of NWF shows. The one in Mount Orb, they're also having one Thanksgiving Eve. That's going to be at Bone Crushers. I believe it's at Bone Crushers. And then, of course, that following Saturday is their anniversary show. And I'll have to look at some of maybe the other wrestling events going on in the area. I will have to talk with the guys from Their World Order. I'd love to have them on our show. I'd love for us to go
Yeah.
on their show
Yeah.
because one thing, we're all dads, and so
Yeah.
it fits.
Absolutely. Yep.
But yeah, theirs is really taken off. I believe they're YouTube only for now, but they
Okay.
have a lot. They have a lot of social medias going on though, because they're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, so you can always
Mhm.
find them there. So um, I can't think of anything else.
No, I
Anything
think
else?
that's it.
Let's say any other news, any other wrestling
Not
news?
really. No.
Yeah, the World Cup's
Not.
going on, but I haven't been keeping up with it. And
Eh.
um, I will say Sami Zayn apparently did have something happen with his family. I think he had a death in the family.
Yeah,
Don't
they said on SmackDown that he had he wasn't at SmackDown because he was dealing with a personal issue. That's
Yeah.
all they said about it.
And
But
if you do you follow him on Twitter?
yes.
Did you see what he posted?
I haven't been on Twitter much today, so I didn't see.
This was let's see where you at. If it comes up. On it says it says 2 days ago. So on Saturday, he made a post, and it's in Arabic.
Hmm.
And when you translate it, it says, "We belong to Allah, and to Him we shall return."
Okay.
For those who don't know, Sami Zayn, he's Muslim,
Hmm.
and so it makes sense, because like he posted it in Arabic, because
Yeah.
the Quran is it's meant to be read and spoken in Arabic because that's the original
Hmm.
language of it.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so for him to post that, which means first of all he speaks at least three different languages,
Hmm.
and if you look at the comments, people said, uh, for those who didn't understand, because I mean I'm reading it, I'm going, okay, something must have happened in his family. Because
Hmm.
saying we belong to Allah, to Him we shall return,
Hmm.
means there's probably a death in the family.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people were saying. And so I don't think that he's actually come back and confirmed it because, I mean, well, he doesn't have to.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
so, but dealing with a personal matter,
Hmm.
you know, um, and, and also, that's one of the reasons why he doesn't go to Saudi, because
Yeah.
he's also Syrian.
Yep.
His
Hmm.
family came from Syria to Canada.
Yep.
And there's that civil war thing going on. And he's like, I'm not going to Saudi Arabia. You could not force me to go to Saudi Arabia.
Right. Right.
So I don't blame him. And I'm glad that the WWE does not make a big deal about it. They just say they respect him. There we go.
Yeah.
So I don't have anything else.
No, I'm good.
Nope. Well, wow. And normally we're two guys, we just love to talk. So, but it is Monday, and we got all the next couple of weeks with Thanksgiving and all sorts of other things going on. And
Hmm.
so these are going to be a nice, fun weeks leading into the holidays. Mariah
Yeah.
Carey, she's thawing out right now.
Oh, she's already broken out of the class. She's
What is somebody playing at your house?
uh Hope played it to annoy me.
Well, you
And
need
then
to knock knock
I've
it
heard
off.
it in I've heard it in stores already. So
Not to knock it off, and you need to put on, because I'll go through these phases, different bands. Put on Jelly Roll,
yeah,
the
yeah.
new Jelly Roll CD album, whatever you call it. The song
Mhm.
"Save Me," "Son of a Sinner," "A Dead Man Walking." There you go. Just listen to
There you
those.
go. Yep.
I'm not going to say it's going to put you in a good mood because they're actually kind of sad, sad songs, but they're very good songs. But
Yeah.
Jelly Roll's the one I just found. Kind of, where have I been? Yo, where have I been? With this is awesome. So, but either way, until Thursday when we'll figure out something to talk about. Good night, my
All right.
friend, and God bless.
God bless.